My name is David, and today I want to tell you the scariest story of my life. It was a cold November when the Cursed Circus arrived in our peaceful town of Willowbrook. It was a traveling attraction that I had never seen before, and the atmosphere surrounding it was filled with a dark and unsettling energy. I was a young investigator, always on the lookout for unusual stories to share on my blog. When I heard about the Cursed Circus, I knew I had to investigate. I put on a heavy coat, grabbed my camera, and headed to the location where the show was taking place. The first thing that struck me was the appearance of the clowns. They weren't the cheerful, colorful clowns I had seen as a child, but they had pale and eerie makeup with smiles that seemed to hide dark secrets. They performed a series of bizarre and disturbing acts. The audience was transported into a world of horror and madness, but they seemed fascinated by the show. During the final act, one of the clowns, named Malevolent Clown, staged an seemingly impossible disappearance. A boy was tied to a chair, and Malevolent Clown approached him with a large circular saw. The crowd held their breath, but when the saw began to cut the boy in half, there was no blood, only sinister laughter. The audience applauded, and I was bewildered. There was something very strange about all of this, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. I decided to wait until the circus closed for the night to try to find out more. When the circus finally emptied out and the spectators had left, I sneaked into the main tent. It was dark, and the moon barely illuminated the perimeter. I entered quietly and hid among the curtains, trying to remain invisible. While I was hidden there, I began to hear softly malevolent voices coming from behind the scenes. I cautiously approached, and through the curtains I saw a group of clowns gathered in a circle, illuminated only by candles. They were speaking in a strange, chant-like language, and it seemed like they were summoning something terrible. In the center of the circle, there was a porcelain doll resembling a clown, and one of the clowns poured blood over it. That blood was real, and my heart started to race. It was time to leave, but first I had to find out what was happening. I continued to watch as the ceremony went on. Suddenly, the porcelain doll came to life, with its eyes glowing red. The clowns began to dance around it, laughing and screaming in a manic frenzy. I couldn't bear to see more. I was terrified and determined to get out of there. But as I tried to do so, I tripped over a rope and made a noise. The entire circle of clowns turned to me with malevolent looks in their eyes. In an instant, I was surrounded by the clowns. They grabbed me and dragged me toward the porcelain doll. Malevolent Clown had a diabolical smile as he stared at me. It seemed like they were about to offer me as a sacrifice to the creature they had summoned. As I got closer to the doll, terror gripped me. I didn't want to become a part of that macabre spectacle, but it seemed there was no way out. Then, suddenly, a burst of fireworks echoed in the night sky. The clowns momentarily turned away, distracted by the fireworks display. It was my only moment of freedom. I jumped up, running toward the exit with all my strength. I managed to escape the clowns and their cursed ceremony. As I fled through the darkness, I heard a sinister laugh that seemed to follow me. It was Malevolent Clown, who had recognized me. He continued to laugh as I got farther away from the circus, and the sound of his laughter haunted me for days. I never knew what those clowns were trying to summon or what would have happened if they had captured me. But one thing was certain. The Cursed Circus was much more than just a show. It was a place of horror and madness, and I was fortunate to have escaped its dark influence. That night made me reflect on how much darkness can hide behind a smile. And even though I survived my encounter with the Cursed Circus, its memory continues to haunt me like an endless nightmare.
I was an enthusiast of antiques, and on that cold autumn morning, while I spotted an old thrift store, my gaze was immediately captured by a clown mask. Resting on a dusty shelf, the mask had an eerily sinister appearance. Its colors were faded, with paint peeling in various spots, but its eyes were the true focal point of terror. They held a gleam of malice, a darkness that seemed to penetrate the soul of anyone who gazed upon it. I couldn't resist the temptation to purchase it. The store owner seemed reluctant to sell it as if he knew its secret, but he eventually relented, asking for only a small sum. As I held the mask in my hands, a shiver of unease coursed down my spine, but I ignored my instinct and brought it home. From that moment on, I began to notice strange changes in myself. I would wear the mask for fun, trying to scare my friends, but gradually, I began to feel my own personality fading. The darkness in the mask's eyes seemed to absorb me, making me increasingly cynical and cold. One night, while wearing the mask, I found myself in a place I didn't recognize. It was an abandoned circus, a place that appeared desolate for decades. The tents were torn, the benches were broken, but somehow the stage appeared intact. And on the stage was a clown wearing my mask. The clown gestured for me to come closer, and I approached without being able to resist. As I walked toward him, the memories of my previous life seemed to fade away, replaced by a feeling of emptiness. I found myself on the stage, next to the clown, and I began to dance, to smile in an unnatural manner, while the non-existent audience applauded. It was as if I had lost control of my body. The following nights were a nightmare. Every time I wore the mask, I ended up back at the abandoned circus, forced to perform for an invisible audience. The mask seemed to control every movement I made, forcing me to perform increasingly dangerous and terrifying acrobatics. In the real world, my life was falling apart. Friends distanced themselves from me. My career was in ruins, and the terror I felt while wearing the mask was turning into sheer madness. I tried to get rid of it, to throw it away, to burn it, but every time I did, the mask mysteriously reappeared in my closet, ready to torment me once more. The truth about the clown mask began to unravel when I met a man who looked worn, with haunted eyes that seemed to conceal a terrible story. He told me that years ago he had possessed the same mask, and it had destroyed his life. He spoke of the curse surrounding the mask and how it was connected to a malevolent spirit that roamed from circus to circus, controlling anyone who dared to wear it. I decided to search for a solution, a way to break the curse that kept the malevolent clown trapped in the mask. With the help of the man with the tragic stories and esoteric knowledge, we began to explore the nature of the bond between the spirit and the mask. We discovered that the clown was a tormented spirit who, centuries ago, had sought fame and power through performances in the circus. When his thirst for notoriety and the desire to strike terror into the audience became insatiable, he bound himself to a clown mask, his final act before death. In that moment, the mask became his link to the world of the living, allowing him to continue sowing terror. To defeat the spirit, we realized we had to perform a complex exorcism. The man guided me through a ritual that involved the use of ancient symbols and spells. While still in possession of the mask, I prepared to enter the dark world where the spirit was trapped. The transition was jarring. I found myself in a distorted and chaotic world, a kind of macabre circus where the spirit of the clown held dominion. Desperate screams and malevolent laughter echoed in the air as the spirit tried to dissuade me from my purpose. The mask I wore contorted and tried to break free from me, but I was determined to end this curse. The dark world trembled, and the spirit of the clown screamed in agony. The ritual succeeded, and I finally managed to separate the spirit from the mask. The spirit of the clown was dragged away, screaming and begging for mercy as it vanished into the darkness. The mask returned to its inert form, devoid of any malevolent presence. I was left in shock, but at least I was now free from the curse that had undermined my life. I returned to reality with the mask in my hand, now devoid of the power it had once held. From that day on, my life gradually returned to a normal pace. I had learned a terrible lesson about the nature of antiques and the hidden dangers behind them. The mask was kept safe, away from my sight and the sight of others. Every time I thought back on that strange adventure, I realized how close I had come to losing everything due to the clown's curse, but I had also proven that courage and knowledge could overcome even the darkest evil.